Hello and welcome to the coding walkthrough video for Prototype 0.2. This is the second video in this series and well, let's begin. So this update added a bunch of new features to the game, most notably of which is the fuel system that you can see if I hit play in the top left hand corner of the screen. Basically what it does is adds fuel and fuel consumption to the Fortitude, the ship here. So as you can see, if I hold W, the fuel level starts to go down. 99, 98, and that happens whenever you do pretty much anything with the ship. So going forward, it uses fuel. If you rotate, it uses fuel. Again, watching that number there. Using the boosters uses a lot of fuel, and using the map uses fuel as well. This is all to kind of balance the game out, basically, and to make it, well, a lot more realistic, as fuel is obviously a pretty big thing in real life space travel. The other thing we've added as well is the ability to refuel the ship. If we go near to this handy refuel cloud here, you'll notice the fuel level is going up. It's gone up to 100% there, and then we can be on our merry way. So that's the fuel system, the new thing that we've added there. Other than that, though, there have been a few more additions. First of all, if you crash into something, now the needles come off as well. Those bits there. That wasn't a particularly good crash, so what I'll do is just re-demonstrate that for you. But yeah, crash into something really, really quickly. Bang. All those little needle bits at the top come off as well. And, now this is really, really cool. I'm actually quite proud of this feature. If you hold the F key, all the bits come back. Well, they come towards you, so you can see over there one of them still hasn't quite decided to come back to me. Come on. Catch it. There we go, there's that one. And I think the other one's lost to the ether. It's so small I can't even see it. Oh well. But yeah, so if you hold the F key, ooh, I think I just flew past. If you hold the F key, it recalls all the lost parts to you. Now, we added that feature because sometimes if you crashed into something, as I'll do again here, things would go flying away, like that needle there is flying off into the distance, and you wouldn't be able to see them or find them, and some bits you just lose forever, and that's unfortunate, and obviously not ideal. So, oh god, they've gone way too far. We've added this thruster mechanic, essentially, that pulls the... I'm spinning really badly. Pulls the bits back towards you, or in the general direction of the ship. We don't want to make it too easy, so it just kind of pulls them loosely towards... that's why we're out of fuel. Yeah, so that's another mechanic I forgot to mention. If you run out of fuel at 0%, the ship stops working. And the reason we ran out of fuel there is because using the recall mechanic as a bit of a what's it called, a counter buff to it, if you will. Using the recall mechanic uses a lot of fuel. Like holding F there, you notice the fuel levels drop 10% just holding it, and another 10% there just holding it for a few seconds. Come here, thank you. I need that radar dish. Come here. Bang. There we go. But yeah, so we're now at 48% fuel just from recalling those bits there. And the reason for that is the recall system should only really be used in absolute emergencies, as obviously it's quite overpowered. So this is a bit of a counter to it that uses a lot of fuel. But yeah, so anyway, the reason we added it is because you could lose bits of the ship quite easily, as momentum would send them spinning off into space. So this is a bit of a response to that, if you will. It's also really fun. I added it as a bit of an experiment, really. And it's just such a cool mechanic. Or at least I think so, anyway. So we're at 64% fuel. Bits are scattered everywhere. Oh, no. Things have gone wrong. Give me the thrusters back. You can also hold G to slow things down as they come towards you. Oh, we're on 30% fuel. Come on. I just need that other thruster. Come here. Yes. Yes! That looked really cool. Very Iron Man. But yeah, and now with 10% fuel left, we rush towards the fuel cloud in the vain hope that we might actually survive this. No! We missed it. 6% fuel. The map uses quite a lot of fuel, so I'm trying to use it sparingly to see where I am. 2%. Oh, 1%, and we did it. There we go, refueling up nicely. And yeah, that was a rather lengthy demonstration, but a demonstration nonetheless, of all the new things that we've added to Prototype 0.2. So, as usual, what I'm going to do now is go through the code and explain how it all works, essentially. So, we'll begin with the fuel system. So, the way the fuel works here in the game is it's basically just a float. A float that starts the game at 100 F, 100%, and then slowly gets decreased by a series of other floats. It's basically one massive mathematical, I don't want to say equation, sum. It's a mathematical sum, basically. So up here, we've got a public float called fuel level, which is the fuel level, funnily enough. It starts at 100%. And if we go down here, in update, it is continuously dropped by the total fuel consumption, which is this thing here, times time.delta time. And the total fuel consumption float is everything that could possibly consume fuel. So thrust consumption, which is how much fuel the thrusters use, maneuver consumption, which is how much fuel the maneuvering thrusters use, i.e. the rotation. Boost consumption is how much fuel the boosters use, which is a considerable amount, I might add. Map consumption is obviously the amount of fuel that the map uses. And the refuel level is how much you're, basically if you're getting refueled or not, if you're in that fuel cloud. Now all these things added together come to the total consumption, which is then just times by time.delta time to make the fuel level change in real time. And that is the fuel level. And if we go up here, what this bit does, the check consumption function, is it just checks to see what's happening at any given time. So if thrust is true, which basically means if the thrusters are being used, then thrust consumption is at 0.2 F. And this bit here, this massively long line, basically checks to see if the recall function is being used, i.e. that Iron Man pulling all the bits back together function. Because if that's true, then thrust consumption is at 10F, a whopping 10F, basically to use up a lot of fuel as you're recalling various lost parts of the ship. But otherwise, if you're not using the thrusters or using the recall function, then thrust consumption is at a solid 0F, i.e. it's not draining or otherwise detracting from the overall fuel level. And the same thing kind of goes for the rest of these things. If you're maneuvering, i.e. rotating the ship, then it's at 0.1, otherwise it's not changing fuel at all. Boosters, again, same thing really. Basically it actually makes the floats be a full number, like above 0 essentially, and therefore have an effect on total fuel consumption if they're being used, and if they're not being used, then make it 0. And then here we've got a simple on-trigger enter. Basically means if you enter the on-trigger sphere circle collider actually of the fuel system, which is, if we go to this, basically if you enter the on-trigger circle collider of this triangle, the fuel cloud, then refuel level is -3, and if you exit it, then it's 0. It's -3 so that it won't so that it'll actually add to the fuel level rather than subtract from it, because this is a subtraction sum here. The minus plus a minus is a plus. There's a bit of maths for you. And then here we basically got it, so if fuel level is at 0, then make sure it's at 0, either you don't go into the minuses because it will be at 0, you can't have minus fuel. And the is empty boolean is true, so the fuel tank's empty. Otherwise, is empty is false because it's not 0. And similar sort of thing here. If your fuel level is greater than or equal to 100, just make it equal to 100, so it can't be more than 100%. And yeah, oh, actually, I should talk about this one. This is how is maneuver is true. Basically, if you are moving the A or D keys, if you're pressing the A or D keys, i.e., if the horizontal axis, the get axis is being used either way, then you're maneuvering. So that's basically checking to see if you're rotating. And I have just realized, in order to, because all these other various booleans are called in the other scripts, the movement scripts particularly. So what I will do actually is just really quickly open this up. Apologies for the short wait. Ah, come on, Unity. There we go. Yeah, so I'll just go through these ones here. Yeah, here we go. So we've slightly changed the flight one that basically goes, it checks to see if is empty is false, i.e. if the fuel tank actually has fuel in it, and if it does, then you're allowed to rotate. It'll actually do that, otherwise it won't. This line essentially disables the ship if there is no fuel in the tank, if the fuel level is at 0%. And then similar kind of thing with this, if you're holding the W key down, then is thrust is true, so it starts draining the fuel from that. And then a similar kind of thing happens down here. If is boosting is true, i.e. if you've got the boosters true, and you're pressing W, then is boost is true. So you're not using the thrusters anymore, using the booster thrusters, and that adds that sets that float to true. And yeah, it's all pretty simple stuff really. It's all just kind of Boolean based. Just open up the camera script really quickly. I'll show you that one too. It's pretty simple, but I'll just show you anyway because I've got to walk through all of the code. Yep. So if you are zoomed out, then isMap is true, and if isMap is true here, then obviously the map consumption is true because in order to using the map consumes fuel essentially. So yeah, let's get rid of these two if we don't need them anymore. So yeah, that is the fuel system. And yeah, so it's not massively, well, it is quite complicated, but it's not massively complex in terms of actual code. It's just a series of booleans and floats. Lots of maths, basically. And then the next thing I want to show is the GUI, or GUI, which is basically this thing here. Yeah, this thing here. It's pretty simple. Well, it's not, but I'm going to say that anyway. It takes the speed, it calls the rigid body of the spaceship and takes the velocity dot magnitude of it, i.e. basically its forward speed. I mean, I don't need to explain what speed is. It's speed. Then rotation here takes the angular velocity. That's basically speed, but how fast you're rotating rather than how fast you're going forward. And then it also takes the fuel level, which can be found in the fuel system script. The fuel levels thing, what I explained earlier. And then it takes all of those and adds them and draws a GUI box and adds them in. So forward thrust, which is just what it says. Come on, there we go. So that's what it says here. And then adds that to the floats that we've defined up here, plus the various units, because you're going to have units. And then this bit's actually left over from the old NASA space game prototype, although we've kept it in because it's useful. Basically, if you go above a certain rotational speed, then you die because G-force. Speaking of death, actually, that's the next thing I was going to talk about. You can now die in the game. Amazing, I know. I didn't actually demonstrate that. I'll demonstrate that in a second. But basically, what it does is it takes the speed of the ship, which, like the UI script a second ago, just takes the velocity or magnitude of the rigid body 2D attached to the Fortitude, the ship, and goes, if you collide with something tagged with space, which is everything in space, and the ship speed, i.e. the velocity, is greater than 10, which is rather fast, then destroy the ship. So what that basically means is that if you hit something really, really fast, then the ship will blow up. This is something I'll try and demonstrate here. Bang. Now you may be thinking, what? Why didn't the ship blow up? Well, it's pretty simple actually. See, we were going to have a health system in the game. I.e. the ship has a certain... Oh, come on. Come back here. I.e. the ship has a certain amount of health, and when you hit something or get damaged, it detracts from that health. But we decided to scrap that last week in favour of a different and more realistic system, because ships in real life don't have health. If you hit something with a spaceship in real life, you die. And so we wanted to kind of keep that realism, but at the same time making it still fair, because no one wants to insta-die in a game and lose all their progress, because that sucks. So we've basically got, actually, if I just click this. So what we've basically got instead is a shield. Why does that have a polygon collider on it? I thought I'd get rid of that. But yeah, what we've basically got instead is a shield. As you can see here, each of these trigger sphere circle colliders, keep saying sphere, I mean circle, these all are bits of the ship's shield. Because if any of these bits, i.e. the needles, the radar, all the thrusters, if any of them collide with something at really high speed, they'll just fall off or become detached. They won't blow the ship up. It's only if the main body, i.e. this bit of the ship, hits something really, really hard that the ship will blow up. So what you've basically got is a 2-hit kill on the Fortitude. Because you've got to hit something really hard first in order to... There we go, we're dead. In order to lose the needles and all the other bits. We hit something really hard here, see... We've essentially lost the shield for the main body, because all these bits surround the main body. And without that... there's nothing to protect it from the elements. So yeah, in a nutshell, all of these various different parts of the ship that detach act as a shield for the ship. And once you lose them, try not to lose them, but if you lose them, then you lose the protection. And if the main body of the ship, which is protected by these, if the main body of these touches something, well, if the main body of the ship collides with something at high speed, then the ship will blow up. So see, right now, we are completely naked, as it were. There's nothing protecting the ship from the elements now. So if you hit something at really high speed, you're going to blow up. Sound effects coming later. But yeah, sorry, it was a rather complicated explanation, but the ship's got a shield, essentially. And so, going back to the code here, if the main body of the ship collides with something, and the ship speed is higher than 10, then blow everything up. That's essentially what that means. So it's like a health system, but not an actual health system, more of a generous destruction, if you will. And as I said, the reason we added this was because it's more in line with real life. If you hit something hard enough in a ship in real life, bits will come off, or you'll die. You know, there's no health bar in real life, so we felt that there shouldn't be a health bar in the game, because this game is obviously trying to be as realistic as possible. Moving on, the last bit of code I got to show you is, of course, the Iron Man style recalling the part system. And it's down here in the recall function. Basically, if input.key code F, if you press the F key, and is lost is true, i.e. if you've lost any of the ship's parts, and the fuel level is greater than 0, because obviously it uses fuel, so you've got to have fuel in order to be able to use this mechanic. If that's true, then add a force to the bits that have fallen off, to the player's transform position minus your current transform position. So what that basically means is come towards the player. And if that's happening, then is recalling is true, obviously, because is recalling is then called in the fuel system script to consume fuel. Otherwise, if you're pressing the G key and is lost is true and there's more than a little bit of fuel, then move away from the player. So what that basically means is, as you saw in the demonstration earlier, come on, we move forward a little bit. We just hit a very rare instance where I collided with it in such a way, because as you can see, that bit there is exposed. So yeah, if you collide with it, you can collide with things in such a way that you'll completely miss the shield of the ship, which is what I just did there. But anyway, so you've got to be very unlucky to do that though. If you pull things towards you, you can also slow them down. See, pulling things towards me, slowing down. Pulling things towards me, slow them down. And that's basically to kind of counteract them going ridiculously fast. See, going quick, slow them down. And that's what the G key does, is it basically just slows the bits that are travelling down so that you can maneuver around and then catch them in the ship. And that's it, really. That's the code from this prototype. A lot of new additions and a lot of pretty interesting new mechanics, I think. Yeah. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in prototype 0.3.